Yes, Olav. The core sensor, it measures skin temperature, it measures heat transfer, and it collects heart rate from your heart rate monitor. But it's not actually like you used to work with the core temperature pills that you have to either swallow or put in from the other end. And I guess you've probably used like rectal thermometers, and there's a lot of different ways you can measure core temperature. But the core, it doesn't actually measure core temperature, but it gives you an estimated core temperature. Yeah. What would you say are kind of the differences here for those that I've been asked many times, like why doesn't it fit perfectly with the rectal temperature that you would measure? If you put it up rectally, it will fit perfectly with a rectal thermometer. And that's the clue. Good answer. Yeah. Because if you take a rectal thermometer, of course clean it and everything so it's 100% sanitized, but if you take a rectal thermometer and you put it into your ear, you'll see that there's a difference there already. If you take it in the mouth, you will see there's a difference there as well. And then you can say, okay, so there's an offset. But it's not only to the offset you'll actually see something. Because if you, let's say that you had 3 thermometers, so rectal thermometers, brand new ones, you put up one rectally, you take one into the mouth and one into your earlobe, or into your ear, you'll see that between those 3 devices, you can maybe end up with a slight difference in temperature after they stabilize. So let's say 37 degrees Celsius to make it simple. When you start to exercise now, then you would say, okay, since these are the same thermometers, then you would expect to see the same slope or same increase. But because you also are measuring now 3 different locations on your body, so let's say you are running, or let's say you're cycling, maybe better even. So if you're cycling, obviously now the muscles that are involved in increasing your core temperature is basically your thighs. So your legs are the ones that are producing. That means also they are the closest to basically where the heat source is, or basically the heat source and where the heat is going to increase. You will see that the rectal thermometer will actually rise faster, and you will also get to a higher core temperature than what you will end up with. For example, if you take a rectal thermometer or the same kind of thermometer and you measure in your mouth or in your ear. And the reason for that is simply because you're measuring at different locations on the body. And because you're measuring in different locations on the body, some of the sources, or let's say locations, will be closer to where you're generating the heat, other places will be further away. That means also that eventually the idea is, of course, that you will end up with an equilibrium. So if you exercise with the same pace over time, the temperature comes up and then it starts to get more in equilibrium across the whole body. But it's not really like that, because at the same time you're also dissipating heat. And obviously here it's warmer, but up here it's then further away from the source, and you will not have, it will be lower temperature. So the same thing is also with the core, that if you had actually put this up rectally, you'll end up with the same temperature as a rectal thermometer. But the fact is that you're measuring on the skin and very often at the apical. And because of that, you're already, let's say, measuring at a different location, and that means also that you have to establish a little bit of a new reference. So I wouldn't obsess too much over that it necessarily should be the same as a rectal thermometer. I would rather say that, okay, hey, now I got this thermometer, so instead of that I have to use a pill, I don't know, we spent 20,000 euros on temperature pills leading into Tokyo. And also afterwards, sometimes when we do new reference tests and other things to see how changes to the development is going. But the point is that when you use the core, what you want to do is that when you bring it on here, you get a baseline measurement, and as you go, the brilliant thing with it is it connects to your apps. You can actually see the history of the data, also in the Garmin. And then when you do, for example, in a ramp test, or you do a harder exercise, you will know that, okay, I'm able now to get up to 39.5 or 39 degrees Celsius, and then I really start to struggle. And the whole point is that in heat, what you'll see is obviously you reach 39 degrees Celsius at a lower power number, and you also maybe get there quicker. But as you heat it up, what you're looking for is that independently of this one had shown 39 degrees, or it had just given you a random number, or not a random number, but let's say operate on a completely different scale. So it gave you a number, let's say they give you number 3. The whole point is that you want to see that for that number 3, or then in this case 39, that 1, as you heat acclimatize, that basically your power number comes up, get closer and closer to basically normal performance again, despite higher core temperature, which means that you are starting to adapt to heat. The other things you're actually also looking to is that you actually are able to go a little bit higher as well. That maybe you can go to 39, then to 39.5 degrees Celsius. And this is also then, it means basically that you are be able to ride at a higher power for the same core temperature now in a warm climate. But in addition, that you also are able to go a little bit higher because you're starting to get to tolerate more and more heat as well. There are some people that are a little bit afraid of this, but we also know that basically what happens when you expose, and athletes are naturally heat adapted, actually partially heat adapted, depending on how hot the climate is. But the other thing that's also happening as we expose the body to higher temperatures induced by the body, because you're exercising, and that is that you actually also end up with producing something called shock proteins and other things as well, in addition to the increased plasma volume, and so that actually helps you perform with a higher core temperature than what you normally would do.
I remember hearing something, I don't know if it's a fun fact, and I don't know if it's true, but in the Tokyo Olympics, the first 10 placements, you could actually also rank them after by their core temperature when they. I don't know if that's true, but do you think there's something in it?
Yes. So the thing is that this was actually from Doha, the World Championship in 2017, I think, in cycling, and it was a time trial. And basically, if you look into the podium there, the one that has the highest core temperature, the second place had the second highest, the third one had the third highest core temperature, and I think this was down to place 4 or 5 or something like that. And after that, then it was starting to become more like minute differences, or a little bit more like, not necessarily, but you can basically say, like, if you just say that, okay, who had the highest core temperature? Well, that was the winner. Who had the second highest? Well, that was exactly the second place. Who had the third highest? That was the third place. And it also makes sense, because what we have to remember, why does our core temperature increase? The core temperature increases. We talked about the VO2 master, and where you basically measure the oxygen efficiency, so how effectively. But what we also then know is that it's not like we are able to turn every calorie. So when we eat the Morton gel, it's not like we can turn every gram of the Morton gel into forward propulsion. Large portion of that actually goes to heat.
Exactly.
And that's
heat energy.
Yes, and that's actually heat energy, heat power, heat energy. And that's what you actually capture with this, because the increase in your core temperature is a function of that your muscles are producing more heat than actually mechanical power.
Yeah. So in one sense, you could say that the core temperature is actually an indirect measure of what you could actually be looking for, which is the energy. In the energy budget, it's heat energy and it's mechanical energy.
Exactly.
So the heat energy transfer is actually what you're interested in much more than the actual core temperature.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Core temperature is a result of the heat that you're producing.
Yeah.
And this is actually what you want to do, like in a car. A normal combustion car has an efficiency of between 20 to 25%, let's say 20% for sake of simplicity. So that means that for every liter of fuel that you actually goes into the engine with the oxygen it is consuming, only 20% of that goes into forward propulsion, or let's say mechanical power for the car. 80% of that is heat to the environment. Electrical cars are obviously completely different there. They are much more efficient, but for combustion cars, this is the case. And the same thing is also for humans. We are around 20% efficient, we are at least in cycling and running, even worse in swimming, but that's also because you are swimming in water and the conductivity of water and so on. But around 20% efficiency, that means that 80% of the calorie action goes to heat, 20% goes to mechanical work, or what you can convert into forward propulsion. But that's also why, when you look at this one, what you really want to see is that when you increase the efficiency, for example, because when you are in, what we also forget sometimes is that when we go to heat, the body has to start to prioritize to use actually some of those calories to cool the body. And that means even less power available per calorie now for forward propulsion. But as you heat adapt, again, measuring with the core, and you see that the power output is coming up or higher for the same temperature. That means basically efficiency is going up. You're using the same amount of calories, but you're able to convert more of that into power and less into heat.
So efficiency, I guess, is the key, and heat loss or controlling your heat is a big part of that, in terms of the energy that you eat that you need to translate into. You want all of it to go into mechanical output.
Ideally, of course, we need to maintain more temperature, core body temperature, so we don't suddenly end. Yeah. So, but no, it's you know, Formula One cars, they have an efficiency that is closer to 50%. But the reason for that is because it's not because the combustion engine is 50% efficient. It's simply because they are allowed to build systems that are recycling the heat. So that would be the equivalent of that we actually had plates on us that actually took and converted the heat here into electricity, and then we could use the electricity in combination that we are pedaling, but we could use the electricity from the heat that our body produces to forward propulsion again.
That's the next generation triathlon suits.
Yeah, if it's legal.